This is the video for the June 2019 short response for the Algebra Regents exam. In question number 25, we want to solve algebraically for x. So what we want to do is I would change all the fractions into decimals first, but you don't have to do that. You want to distribute and distribute first. Negative 2/3 times x is negative 2/3 x. Negative 2/3 times 12 is negative 8. You then want to add together your like terms. The negative 2/3 x and the positive 2/3 x just cancel each other out because they add up to 0. So you really have this two-step equation. I would try to get the x all by itself by doing -2 and -2. I would change the fraction into a decimal, top divided by bottom. So I would divide by negative 1.25 on each side, and you get a final answer of 8. In question number 26, if C equals G minus 3F, find the trinomial that represents C when F equals this and G equals this. So they tell you what F is and they tell you what G is. We want to sub them into the formula where they belong. So G is 3x squared plus 4. That goes in the G spot here. In the F spot, we have 3 times that. So we're going, or negative 3 times that because the minus sign. So when we go to do that, we want to distribute. Negative 3 times 2x squared is negative 6x squared. Negative 3 times 6x is negative 18x. Negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. We then want to add together our like terms. So add together your x squareds with your x squareds to be a negative 3x squared. You just have a plain x there, and then we can add together our constants with our constants, our plain numbers with our plain numbers. 4 plus 15 is 19. We want to put your answer in standard form. They don't ask for it in this question. For this particular question, it can be out of order, but a lot of times on the Regents exam, they ask you to put it in standard form, which means your biggest exponent first, then your next biggest, then your plain constant at the end. So just as a good rule of thumb, you should probably do that just to be safe. In question number 27, we want to graph the piecewise function on the set of axes below. Now, if you forgot where your absolute value symbol is, it's second 0, which is catalog for your absolute value. It'll show up as ABS. All right, ABS and then parentheses. All right, that's how it'll show up on your calculator. So we want to type in the absolute value of x. We only want to graph that from -5 to +2. This has an or equal to symbol, so that's going to be a closed dot. This just has a less than symbol, so that's going to be an open dot. So we type it into our y equals second in table for your point. We don't put arrows on the ends here. That's the tricky part of this question, because it only goes from -5 to +2. So -5 to +2. Close dot right here, open dot right here, no arrows on the ends. Then we want to graph the line -2x plus 10. This time we're going from 2 to 6. It includes 2, it includes 6, close dot and close dot. So from 2 to 6 right here, no arrows on the ends. Always make sure that you label your graphs. By the way, on a side note, this is a function. This dot includes it, this dot does not. So it passes the vertical line test still. In question number 28, we want to solve this algebraically. So divide by 5 and divide by 5 first. 180 divided by 5 is 36. Then you have x squared equals 36. The opposite of squaring something is to take the square root. So square root, you get plus or minus 6. Make sure it's plus or minus. If you only put 6, that's just writing +6. There's really 2 answers there. A couple different ways that you could have done it. You could have used the quadratic formula if you wanted to, and then you get 6 and -6. We could have, but you need to get it set equal to 0 first if you do the quadratic formula. So just be careful there. We would have to do -180 and -180 because remember, you always have to have it set equal to 0 to use the quadratic formula. In question number 29, you're given times and how much snow Washington, D.C. got. Which interval, 1 a.m. to noon or 6 a.m. to 3, has the greatest rate of snowfall? So we're talking about the rate of change, how much it changes over what period of time. So when we're looking at this first interval, how much the snowfall do they get from 1 to noon? 1 to noon is from 1 inch of snow up to 33 inches of snow. So they got 32 inches of snow divided by what period of time? That is an 11-hour time period. So 32 divided by 11 is 2.90, repeating 2.90909090. How much snow did they get from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m.? 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., it went from 11 inches to 36 inches. So they got 25 inches of snow. Over what period of time? 6 to 3 is a 9-hour period of time. So 25 divided by 9 is 2.7, repeating. So which interval had the greatest rate of change? It is the 1 a.m. to noon, because 2.9 is higher than 2.7. In question number 30, the formula for the volume of a cone, volume equals 1/3 pi r squared h. Solve for the equation for h. So we want h equals. When it says solve for h, we want h equals. So we want to get that h all by itself. Now, there are a variety of different ways to do it. This way is probably the easiest way. You could get rid of that 1/3 by doing times 3 and times 3 first, and then divide by everything except for the letter that you're solving for. So you could divide by pi and divide by r squared, divide by pi and by r squared. So 3v divided by pi r squared equals h. There are other ways to do it. We could have multiplied by 3, then divided by pi, then divided by r squared. Or instead of dividing by pi, you could have divided by r squared and then pi. So you might get an answer that has the pi and r squared in different spots, in reverse spots. You could have also just divided it all by once, because you're multiplying 1/3 times pi times r squared times h. You could have just divided by 1/3 pi r squared on both sides and got that. Perfectly fine any way that you do it, as long as it works. In question number 31, given the recursive formula, a sub 1 equals 3. So that's your first term. State the values of a sub 2, 3, and 4. So what you have to do is you have to take your previous term, all right, and add 1 to it, but then multiply by 2. So each time we're taking our previous term, so we're going to take that 3, add 1 to it, which is 4, and then multiply by 2, which is 8. Take your previous term, a sub 3 minus 1, which is a sub 2, add 1 to it, so 8 plus 1, we get the 8 from here, all right? Add 1 to it, multiply by 2, you get 18. Take that 18 and sub it in, all right? So 18 plus 1, multiply by 2, and you get 19. So your three terms are 8, 18, and 38. In question number 32, determine and state the vertex using the method of completing the square. You have to use completing the square here. Our first thing is to add 8 to both sides. So we want to do that. And this one's a little bit weird because it's sort of written backwards than normal. All right. Normally we have like an equals 0 or something like that. So add 8 to both sides, which is fine. I switched it around. All right. I switched it around so it looks more like normal. Then you might want to go into our thought bubble. Take half of the b value and square it. So half of -2 is -1. Be very careful when you put it into the calculator. The inside parentheses, -1 squared. If you don't type it in with parentheses, you'll get -1 instead of +1. So -1 squared is -1 times -1, which is +1. What do we do with that? We add it to both sides. So 8 plus 1 is 9. That creates this trinomial. Now we want to do reverse FOIL. What times what is 1? That adds up to -2. It is -1 and -1. -1 times -1 is +1. -1 plus -1 is -2. We can simplify that. Instead of x minus 1 times x minus 1, we can write x minus 1 squared. The opposite of squaring something is to take the square root. So square root, square root. And then we get that is normally what we would do then is split it, but that doesn't get the vertex. All right, that gets your x-intercepts. To get the vertex, we just leave it in that x minus 1 squared form. This is a very hard question, by the way. We leave it in that x minus 1 squared form. So x minus 1 squared equals 9. To put it into vertex form, we would have to subtract by 9 and subtract by 9. This is vertex form now. And we get 1 and negative 9 from that vertex form. We don't have to do the rest of the completing the square because that gets your x-intercepts or roots or solutions. That doesn't get us the vertex, all right? This is a very hard question. In question number 33, a school plans to have a fundraiser before basketball games, and they are making shirts. Company A charges a $50 setup fee and $5 per shirt. Company B charges a $25 setup fee and $6 per shirt. So you have to use the letters that they give you here, all right? A with X shirts, B with X shirts. So for company A equals 50 plus 5x. Notice that it said an equation. Equations have equal signs. All right, be careful. So the $50 setup fee plus $5 per shirt. B is $25 plus $6 per shirt. All right, and I got that from that information up above. Determine algebraically and state the minimum number of shirts that must be ordered for it to be cheaper to use company A. So what we want to do is company A is this 50 plus 5x. Company B is 25 plus 6x. We want to know when the company A is cheaper than B, so you'd use the less than symbol here. So 50, we would want to solve it. So minus 5x minus 5x minus 25 minus 25. You get 25 is less than x. Be careful. That really means x is greater than 25 when we flip it around. The minimum number of shirts that must be ordered. Now, this is another tricky part of this question. Man, this question's hard. It doesn't say x equals 25. The next biggest number would be 26. So that would be the minimum number of shirts it would take. All right. You have to be very, very careful there. You could check this one by subbing in the 26 into here and here. You would get that company A is $180. Company B is $181. That's a very hard question. In question number 34, graph y equals f of x and y equals g of x. Here's your two equations. We want to graph them and then determine and state all the values for which they're equal. Well, we have a quadratic and a line. All right, type it into your y equals, hit second and table for your points. Make sure that you have arrows on the ends and make sure that you labeled your graph. Now, I labeled my graph not by writing the equation, but writing f of x and g of x. You could do it either way. Where are they equal to each other? They're equal to each other at the intersection points. So all the values of x, our intersection points look like they're at 0, 3 right here and at 3, negative 3 right here. So that means our x values are 0 and 3. It doesn't say state the intersection points, but state the x values of the intersection points. In question number 35, we want to write the linear regression equation, state the correlation coefficient, and explain what that means in the context of the problem. You have to turn on your stat diagnostics. So go to your mode button, turn on your stat diagnostics, and then we want to type our data into our stat edit L1, stat edit L2, stat calc number 4 for linear regression. When you do that, you get y equals 7.79x plus 34.27. It does state the equation, so you have to have the y equals there. The R value from that is 0.98 rounded to the nearest hundredth. This one was rounded to the nearest hundredth as well, because that's what the question asks you for. 0.98. 0.98 is really close to 1 or negative 1. So that is considered a strong positive correlation. In the context of the problem, what does that mean? Well, we're talking about hours spent studying and test scores. As the number of hours increases, look at what happens to the test scores. The test scores also increase. So in the context of the problem, you have to talk about hours and test scores, not just stating that it's a strong positive correlation. In question number 36, a system of inequalities is graphed on the set of axes below. They actually don't have you graph these. They just have you work backwards and ask you what the equations are. This is hard again. So state the inequalities. So looking at this red one, I put dots where the line crosses the background grid on all of these. All right. So we have our y. I can see that it is a solid line and we're shading below. So that's going to be less than or equal to. The slope, how do you get from dot to dot to dot to dot? You're going up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So 2 or 2 over 1 goes in front of the x. Our y-intercept, where the line crosses the y-axis, is at -2, so -2. For the blue line, for the blue inequality, I can see that it's a dotted line and we're shading below. So it's going to be less than. How do you get from dot to dot? You're going down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1. So -3 or -3 over 1. The line crosses the y-axis at 3, so it's +3. That's hard. Which region A, what region A represents? Region A is this double shaded area. Normally they label it with S. Why they chose A, I don't know. But that is the double shaded area is the solution set of the area. That's the double shaded area. State what that entire gray region means. Now, they're just not asking about the solution set. This gray area is the solution set for only this equation. It's only for the red equation. It's not for the whole system. All right. It's only the solution set for the red inequality there. In question number 37, this is our 6-pointer. We have browns and greens, all right, and they are buying cheeseburgers and fries. 4 cheeseburgers and 3 fries equals 16.35. 5 cheeseburgers and 4 fries equals 21.11. Now, be careful. You must use the letters that they give you. You must use C and F. For the brown, the Green said that since their bill was 21.11, each cheeseburger must be 249 and each fries must be 287. Are they correct? Justify or answer. So if you sub in 249 for your C and the 287 for your F, we can do a quick check. 5 times 249 is 1245. 4 times 287 is 1148. And see if it equals 2111. They are not equal, so are they correct? No, it did not check. Use your equations, solve algebraically for the cost of 1 cheeseburger and 1 fry. So we want to multiply to create opposites. Now, this one's hard because 4 doesn't go in evenly to 5, 3 doesn't go in evenly to 4. So you have to multiply both equations to create opposites. So I chose to work with the fries to make opposites with those. So I chose to create a 12F and a -12F. I get a 12F by multiplying by 4, distribute, distribute, distribute. I get a -12F by multiplying by -3, distribute, distribute, distribute. Don't forget to distribute all 3 times. That makes those F's cancel out right there. Add going down, 16 plus -15 is 1C. 6612 plus -6333 is 279. Divide by 1, so you get the cost of 1 cheeseburger is 279. Now, take that 279 and sub it into one of the equations for C. I chose to sub it into the bottom equation. 5 times C, 5 times 279, plus 4F equals 2111. Solve that 2-step equation by subtracting by 13.95 and dividing by 4. You get that fries were $1.79. A passing score on this Regents was 27 credits.